All right, welcome to our class. I'm going to turn the time over to Eva so she can do some announcements. And sorry she is camera off today because she's traveling and her bandwidth isn't very great, but we still get to hear from her. So I'm excited about that.
Sure to welcome everyone to another of our monthly classes. And I'm particularly excited about this one. Rosie and Marie have prepared a competition, and it's going to be great to have it on YouTube as well for the people that weren't able to join with us today. So, just as a reminder, we are holding our in-person gathering next month, the 12th to the 15th in Ireland. And we're also going to be putting up a Zoom link for people that would like to join in the various events that we're having at McGrory's itself. We won't be able to do a Zoom for the bus tour or some of the other out in the country tour sites that we're doing, but we are going to be able to do a Zoom link, and we are going to have it available to anyone that wants it. And of course, request if you wanted to. We would be happy to get donations if you want. You can go to our website and there's a PayPal link for donations there if you feel like making any kind of donation to support the work that we're doing here. We appreciate that. Our newsletter went out a couple of weeks ago, and so if you haven't seen it or if it got stuck in your spam folder, look for the link to download the newsletter. And we have our calendar scheduled for our monthly classes going on into 2027, if you can believe it. But we will be announcing those titles as we move forward with that. But it's really fun to feel like we're a little organized. So, um, and Zach is sort of managing our back office kind of things today, putting stuff in the chat. So be sure to post questions that you have from there. And I'm going to just sit and enjoy and turn the time over to Rosie and Marie.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and super excited to be doing this with Marie because, of course, she is the actual on the ground in Ireland Irish person. And I'm also super grateful for Zach because many times I'm the one posting in the chat the links and those kinds of things. So it's nice to have that being taken care of on the back end. So we thought we would just start out by introducing a little bit about ourselves. And as I go to kind of kick this off, I was thinking about why does this feel so important to me? And for whatever reason, as an American born girl who really felt connected to my Irish heritage, even as a little girl. Um, I really hoped that we could convey how Irish food serves as a powerful identifying symbol, and that community and that sense of resilience that's part of the Irish heritage that I truly grew up even well before I ever was in Ireland, feeling like that was a part of who I was and what I stood for. I was always proud of the fact that my grandparents had immigrated from Ireland, that they had had the resilience to build up their ranch in Oregon from nothing, and many of, even when I would eat potato salad, which I know is not an Irish food, I would feel connected to my Irish ancestry just because potatoes were involved. So I live in Utah in the USA. I have five sons. They're all adults now. Four of them are married, and we have 12 grandkids. My husband and I are coming up on our 40th wedding anniversary, which is hard to understand since it seems like we were only just married a little while ago. Um, but I work as a health coach and I support people all around the world doing that. And I am very passionate about feeling that connection to where we come from and who we are. Okay, so Marie, let's hear about you.
I live here in Kilmanny in County Donegal. I was brought up just like a traditional Irish person. I learned to cook with my granny to start off with. So everything she taught me, I still use today here at home. And my mother would be a traditional cook as well. So it's just plain everyday food we use. Mostly all home cooked from scratch, uh, but all simple and easy to cook. So I'm just hoping that I can add to what Rosie's telling you today.
I am looking forward to everything. Marie's got more stories than I do, so I'm looking forward to you guys being able to hear on those. We wanted to take a look at a bunch of the heritage that has to do with the food. So imagine if you could walk into your ancestors' cottage in a show 200 years ago. What would you smell? What would you hear? What would you taste? Like what would it be like? And hopefully we can expand that understanding and that depth of connection to those things. I had a granddaughter of mine that needed to do a presentation for school, and she reached out and she's like, Grammy, do you have any Irish recipes? Because she knows that I've gone, back and forth to Ireland several times. And so I pulled out the cookbooks, and she's 12 years old. So I was trying to find something that wouldn't be too complicated for her to make. And so I snapped a picture and I sent it to her, and she's like, "Oh, that looks good. Do you have anything else?" And so snapped another. And this is through her mom's cell phone, right? Like I'm texting to her mom's cell phone. And after 4 or 5 different options that I sent her, she sent back in a text, "Is there anything that isn't potatoes?" So then we jumped on the phone and I had a chance to explain to her, well, actually, potatoes really were a major staple for people from when the potato was introduced to Ireland. And so she did end up making a potato dish after all. But I just thought that was her first impression of Irish food, is that all it was potatoes. So this is something where I think that maybe Marie can speak to a little bit more. When you think about those ancestors, Marie, and maybe even like being in your granny's place, what
Yeah,
what
my
was this like being around an Irish table as far back as you could remember, or maybe even the stories that your granny would have been telling you?
yeah, my first memory of being in Granny's was I was born in England, so we moved here whenever I was 4. Moved back here, like mommy and daddy were both Irish. So I can remember the first morning that I woke up in my granny's house. And first of all, I could smell the smoke of the turf fire. And that was in the bedroom, like, but it was coming down and into the bedroom, and the sun was shining. And I can remember the rooster crowing outside and the hens clucking. And I got up, and my grandfather had sausages and fried eggs done for us all up in the range in the kitchen. So that would be my first memory. And every time I smell a turf fire with smoke, it brings me back to when I moved home to Granny's. And we stayed there for a year. So till our own house was built. But I spent a lot of time with Granny. And, you know, it was all just scone bread, boiled eggs, um, homemade jam, uh, butter, um, porridge in the morning. Porridge was a big thing. And then they might have had porridge at night again if there was no food. You know, that was a staple too as well. Their dinner was always at 12 o'clock in the day. So about 11 o'clock, you'd see Granda going out with a bucket and taking potatoes over to the wee tap coming from the spout. And he would be there with a big stick pounding the potatoes to get the dirt off them with the water. And then he'd put them into a big pot. Now, a big pot. It wasn't yeah, even bigger than that one on the picture. And he would put them on to boil. And if there was potatoes left over, then first of all, you sit at the table, and there might have been nothing else for the dinner other than potatoes and butter and scallions, which is spring onions. So you sat with, I remember sitting with a scallion and a potato and eating me dinner like us here, taking a bite of the potato and a bite of the scallion. It was so tasty and you knew no different. You thought it was lovely and it was lovely. And then sometimes they would have got fish. They could have been salted herring or maybe a bit of mackerel or white fish if they were lucky, if they knew a fisherman. Um, People around the coast, that would have been their staple diet, would have been fish and potatoes. But Granny and them weren't beside the shore, so it was, and just an odd time they would have had that. They would have had sausages and bacon, um, minced beef, which is what they used for stews, um, rather than say steak or beef. It would have been minced beef would have been used for the stews. Stew was a big thing because it was a one pot dinner, so maybe one day they would do the stew with just the gravy and no potatoes in it. And then if they had enough left over for the next day, then they would add potatoes into it and make it into like an Irish stew. So that they would have 2 days dinner out of the bit of months that they had. Then the potatoes at the dinner would have been. I was just talking to my friend today, and I was saying to her, did she ever get the potatoes that they built up to a mound and then put a hole in the middle, mashed potatoes, and put a hole in the middle with warm milk and then a bit of butter, maybe a bit of salt and pepper, and a spring onion or just ordinary onion into it. And she says she got it too. It was so nice, and that's just a simple. That was whenever they had no meat. And if you're lucky, you might have had a fried egg from the hens, So people were really poor. They had very, very little.
Yeah.
So what they had to make do and had to make it stretch for a day or two. Because it was all big families too as well. So this big pot of potatoes might have fed the whole family, and maybe in the evening they might have fried it from a bit of lard that they had in the house, or from meat that they'd cooked before and drained off the lard. So if there was extra potatoes, they might have cut them up and fried them then in the evening or something, if they were lucky. But very, 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 very poor people. So they just had to make do with what they had, and neighbors would have helped out neighbors, and like maybe Granny had eggs, and maybe the woman down the road had milk from a cow, so they would swap. She would give them milk, and they would give eggs. That's the way they worked. Then the shops then would have took some of the eggs from the hens. So they would go down with eggs, and the shopkeeper would take so much off their shopping bill then for giving the eggs. Like that was a big thing. The shopkeepers got all the local eggs for people, for people that had no hens. But out in the country, there was very little work, you see, and it was just all kind of the land, or either that or the husbands would be away working, maybe in Scotland or England or maybe Northern Ireland, and they'd be away, whenever they were maybe the potato gathering or something like that, they'd be away working. So the women in the house had to make do with what they had, because there would have been no money. They had to they had to survive on something, so that's the way they worked. And then scone bread, they would have lived on scone bread. And if they were lucky, they got a bit of butter
Yeah.
or a bit of jam. But most of the time, it might have been dry bread, and a wee bottle of milk or tea, which would have been cold by the time they got it, for school, like. And I heard stories that they had to carry a turf each to the school for the teacher to put on the fire.
Mm.
That's how poor it was. Like the school didn't even have turf,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and for
And
those of you that haven't maybe been to Ireland before, the basket in the corner in this picture, that's a basket of turf. And so, I don't
some people
actually,
call it peat, but we
yeah,
call it turf.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't actually have a picture in the presentation of them harvesting it or anything, but Marie, maybe can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah. Peat turf is it's cut in the bog. They lift the top layer of um the growth off the ground. And when you get down below that, there's a black sod is and underneath. I don't know if sod's the right name for it, but they had a spade and they dug every bit of turf out of the oh, I can't even remember the name of the side of earth that's it was like a drill nearly, they would cut the turf out of there and put it up on the bank that it would dry. They would lie it along there till it dried, and then they would stand it up. And like I think it was five turf would stand up against each other like this,
Yeah,
so that they would
like a little
dry.
teepee, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that they would dry. And then whenever they were dry, then they were carried out in the wheelbarrow out to the road. And then maybe years ago would have been a donkey and cart, maybe took them home to the house, or they might have hired a lorry and kind of after the donkey and cart. But the men used to head off to the hill in the morning on their bicycle. Now the hill was a good bit away from, well, I'm thinking about my grannies. Like, I'd say they would have had to cycle about an hour to get to the bog, and then they would head off with their uh, maybe a couple of eggs in their bag and a bit of scone bread and a bottle of tea wrapped up in a cloth or something to keep it warm, and a wee saucepan hanging from the bag too. So whenever they got up to the bog, they would light a wee fire, whenever they were having their lunch, and they would boil a couple of eggs on the wee pan that they had with them and have eggs and a bit of scone bread. And that did them then till they came home at night again. So they were up working at the turf all day and come cycle back home again. And then the farm work and all would have to be done then too as well whenever they got home, whatever the wife couldn't do, because mostly when the men went away, the women run the farm, like, and what looked after all the animals, and the children would have helped as well.
yeah,
So it was a tough time and very, very very good people. Everybody helped each other out. If one boy was cutting the hay, the other boys would be down helping them. That's the way they worked. And then you would return the favor then maybe the next week or whatever. And because they couldn't afford to pay anyone to come in and do the work for them, that's the way they had to do it. And
yeah,
it worked. And it's it still happens in certain places here yet, but not all the time. You know, the some people have kind of kept the old ways, and if you pull me out, I'll pull you out. That sort of way, and help out. but it's not happening as often now as what it used to,
Hmm.
Times are changing. And of course, everything's getting more accessible now. Well, like whenever I was younger, we were lucky we had a fridge, and but there was a lot of places didn't have a fridge. They had a tin with cold water in it, and that kept things cool. In the house, the milk and all, it went into a jug and then into the big tin with the cold
Yeah,
water from the brook, you know,
yeah,
and that's how they managed to keep things cool in the house before the fridges.
yeah. One of the
I
things
don't
I
know. Is
noticed,
there anything else I'm missing out, Rosie?
no, one of the things that you keep bringing up, and I noticed as well, I've read different things about Irish history, and I've seen it in my own family as well. And then also when I was doing some more reading for this, is that resourcefulness is is really ingrained in Irish heritage. Nothing goes to waste. Everything is used. And even some of the different recipes that were even from older times were like they'd boil the sheep's head, even, for example. Like we don't
Yeah,
typically eat sheep's head now, but that was the
yeah.
resourcefulness, right? And
I'm
take
so glad that they've stopped doing that.
right, and then taking the things from the one meal, and if you did have leftover potatoes, for example, then they could be turned into potato bread or potato fritters, or
Mm.
what is, you
Yeah.
had a different name for what we call fritters. I can't remember. Bosch or
Um,
something.
Boxty. There was Boxty, but Boxty wouldn't have been a big thing up here. Would have been more down the country. It was
Mm,
potato bread, potato cakes or potato bread we would have made here. It
yeah.
was just mashed potatoes, a bit of flour if they had it, and just mixed together, maybe salt and pepper, and put on flattened down, put on a pan, and
Hmm.
fried with a wee bit of butter if they had it,
Yeah.
or lard, and that did an evening tea then maybe with a fried egg, so nothing was wasted.
Yeah. Well, and even I can remember Eva and my dad when I was growing up. I can't speak for Eva, but I really liked to have oatmeal, and he could not tolerate what he called porridge. I think he just had had so much of it, and he
Yeah,
wasn't a picky man at all.
mm,
He definitely ate everything. He wasn't picky at all about what he was eating, except for porridge.
yeah, but he probably got porridge every morning and maybe every night growing up,
And
Yeah.
you
lamb,
know.
and lamb. He could
Yeah.
he couldn't abide lamb,
I
but
love
that's
lamb.
because, well, I know, but they would kill the oldest lamb. It
Yeah,
wasn't a lamb anymore, it was a sheep. So what
Mm.
his mother was
it
telling him,
was
she was
mutton.
feeding him lamb,
It
it
was
was really
mutton.
mutton that he was
Yeah,
having. Yeah.
yeah, that's totally different. Yeah.
That's true, Eva. I
Um,
forgot about that. And they were sheep. They had a wheat ranch, but they also were sheep farmers out there in Oregon. So
mm,
yeah.
And it would have been the same here. Like, I remember there was a sheep. I spent a lot of time with my granny, so uh, because my granny was kind of invalided, she was in the corner, so she couldn't go anywhere. I spent a lot of time up with her, but I remember we had a pet sheep out in the front. What we thought was a pet sheep, and every day we'd be going out and calling to the sheep, and it would come over and we'd be feeding it grass from our hand, we'd pull a bit of grass and give it to it and all. So one day we went up and the sheep disappeared, but we passed no remarks. And we're eating our dinner, we're going, this is lovely. And mommy says, "I isn't it?" And she never said anything. And it was a few years later, then she told me that was the sheep.
All she said
And
was,
I would
"Yeah,
say
isn't it?"
if we knew, we would not have ate that sheep. Like, but that's what they
Oh,
had it for, to rare to kill it for food, you
hmm.
know. So that was funny. And
Yeah.
then around the coast, then they would. My friend Una's just reminded me. They would have had winkles and uh, mussels, and they would have picked seaweed from the shore. So there was a lot of dulse. Um, we loved dulse, and I remember we used to have the dulse, and Granny would put sitting on top of the range fire in the kitchen and dry it out and get it really crispy, be like crispy seaweed, like. And we loved that, like. And you ate the dulse without it being roasted too, but it was lovely roasted. And then they had another form of seaweed called sloke, and they would take it, and it was kind of tough, so they boiled it and boiled it, and then it kind of turned a dark green color. It was very good for you. It was full of iron. They kind of fed it to people who maybe were run down or were unwell for a while, and they wanted to build them up. And another form of seaweed too is carrageen moss. Carrageen moss was used. It could be used like turn into nearly like corn flour that would be made up like a custard. They could do that, or they could make carrageen molds. Um, it was like a jelly. It's you would steep the moss first and clean it, and then boil it up, and then with milk, and you would put on some kind of flavour, and it could be at that time they wouldn't have lemon or anything like that. I don't know what flavouring, maybe a bit of cinnamon or something like that they would have put into it. Or a bit of whiskey if they had it and through it. Nowadays they would put maybe a bit of what do you call the cream liqueur? Baileys, but you know the
Oh,
Baileys.
Bailey's, yeah.
Yeah, well, nowadays they put that through it, to flavor it, or a bit of vanilla essence or something like that. And it makes quite a nice dessert. It's like a blancmange kind of thing. Um,
But it was
so
more for people who were like they
I
were trying
will.
to rally them
It's
up. They weren't
it's
well, right?
yeah. It was served to people who weren't well because it was easy digested and easy easily made too as well, and it wasn't too expensive, and it was full of iron, and so it helped to build up people that were sick for a while and
Yeah.
helped them gain weight, and a lot of the old, like they would have had custard and stuff like that too as well, that they would have um, fed to people who weren't well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the carrigan maybe would have been served with um, a bit of jelly, or they would have made rice pudding too as well. That would have been another thing. If they had plenty of milk, if they had an abundance of milk, like from the cows, they would have made rice pudding and served it maybe with a wee bit of jam on top, or so that would have been another thing that would have been it. And then am I jumping from one thing to another too quick?
No, you're it's great. One thing that this picture reminded me of though is when we were talking before, you shared a story about your grandmother and that whole thing of like there's always room for one more, even though, they were doing all they could just to feed themselves,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
The way it was, no matter how little they had, if somebody came in, they got fed. If somebody came visiting and it was tea time, they were told to sit at the table too. And you would do out a wee bit for them to have their share too as well. And there was a big saying here, what something about serve little and serve all or something. I can't remember. Divide. no, it'll come back to me. But there
Yeah.
was a saying to kind of, um, no, I can't remember. But the postman, the local postman, used to come around with the letters every day, and he would have been a cousin of Granny's, but he came every day and got his egg and scone, his boiled egg and scone every day for his lunch. That was just over the years. That was the habit. He didn't have to carry a lunch with him because he was going to Mary Bunner's to have his lunch. You know,
Yeah.
and even like travelers coming around, or there used to be gypsies came around with baskets of wee baskets, and old women, with shawls around their heads, just like you would see in old pictures, and the long skirts, and they would come with the wicker basket full of wares, to sell, and it could have been needles and threads and stuff like that. And I remember Granny taking them in and giving them food too as well. Nobody got away without a cup of tea at least and a biscuit, if nothing else.
Hmm.
You know. And on a Saturday would have been the best day to come because there was always wee queen cakes made on a Saturday. You were there till your arms were sore beaten butter to get it nice and light, and butter and sugar. And then this was a real treat on a Saturday. Everyone got a cupcake then after the dinner. Um, and there would have been scones made every day, one or two scones made every day, you know. And whenever the flour was scarce, then there would have been what they called Indian scones, which was a yellow meal. I didn't realize till later on it was cornmeal
Yeah.
that the scones were being made out of. Granny and them loved it, but I could never get a taste for it at all. But I loved scone bread, like I still do. I would still make scone bread.
Yeah. I love this picture that I put up here for you all to see because like the cottage was small inside, and that is where they cooked. They would gather together in there, they would sleep. But you can see
Yeah,
her spinning wheel is out in the family, they're
yeah,
out. They're not necessarily like just in today's world, many times people go in their homes and then they just kind of stay in their homes. And that's not necessarily the way that it would have been. You would have been doing many of your things outside. And of course,
yeah,
Irish weather is not, it's not like it's a bright sunny day every day. You're just out in the weather doing the things that you need to do. So I,
yeah. You could never depend on the weather here. And it's, on cold days, like them houses must have been freezing, like, and they hadn't much room inside either, so they had to do the stuff outside.
yeah,
It was too dark for them to work inside anyway. Like, uh, there was very little light. Like, look at the size of the window in the
yeah,
house.
yeah. Well,
You
and
know,
even that they had a window instead of just an opening that had something draped over it too, you know.
yeah.
Um,
It's the reason why they were so small was to keep in heat. You
yeah.
know, not to let heat escape. You know.
I think the other thing that we've touched on, but just to make sure that everyone's aware, depending on where your family was, I mean, many if people are descendants of the Doherty clan, then many of those would have been from Inishowen. But if you're coming, you have other ancestries of other lines, or they're coming from other areas in Ireland, some of those key foods would have been a little different. There would have been similarities, but there would have been differences. And that's
Yeah.
even true about some of the recipes that I've popped here in the presentation, just for examples. When Marie and I were talking beforehand, she's like, "Oh, we wouldn't have really ever eaten that. That's more like from, from somewhere
Yeah.
else." But as people who have moved away, our families have grown in America or Canada or another place besides Ireland, it all gets lumped into one category of Irish food for us, as opposed it would be to like me in the US, someone being like, and I say where I live, and they're like, oh yeah, I love jambalaya. And I'd be like, well, that's kind of more like a Louisiana, New Orleans thing. That's not really, I didn't grow up eating jambalaya in Seattle. Do you know what I mean? So I thought that was fascinating. And even that the coastal communities, they would have had fish, but there just wasn't the same amount of transportation between the different towns and villages. So even though now we might think, oh, well, that town isn't that far inland, it would have been enough inland that they wouldn't have had
Yeah.
access to
We
fish.
were only about probably 3 miles, 4 miles from the shore, but that was still quite a walk for them to get. And then it's not every shore that you would have got fish on. Like,
Right.
you would have had to find the boats coming in. So really, it would probably be Leanan Bay that people from here would have went to. So that would be a good, well, on the bike, probably an hour and a half. I don't know, about an hour and a half to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So that's quite a distance. And so we did get some fish. There was a fishman used to come around uh, with a van, and all the time we would have got fish from him. But
Hmm.
salt herring was a big thing, because it was preserved, you see, with the salt.
Yeah.
And of course, I loved it at the time. I don't like it anymore because I keep choking the bones. But
Your tastes have refined.
yeah,
It
it's
makes
too much hard work.
Well, and it was interesting as Marie and I were chatting, just basic things like them calling the beef when they call it mince, whereas we would call that ground beef.
Yeah,
It could be even different in like Canada or Australia, or like spring onions, and I would just naturally call those green onions
we
and
call them scallions.
or scallions, right? So
Yeah.
there's these different things that terms that are used for foods
Mhm.
that can be different. And I would have to say, I think that's probably true just from the reading I've done around the country as well. Like Marie, um, what would you call this food that's right here highlighted in this picture?
Oh, pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the recipe, they named them like potato fudge or something like that.
Oh, they're the potato. No, they're pancakes there. They're not they're not potato. They're made from flour and egg and buttermilk.
Hmm. Yeah. And then
They're
I'm
like the
like,
recipe for the scone, but a bit softer and then done in the pan with a bit of
yeah.
butter.
Well, and of course, we have pancakes here in the US as well. And I thought, is this picture just mislabeled or does this actually
Mm.
have potato in it? I don't know.
I don't think so. But maybe it is a form of potato cake, but that doesn't look like it to me.
Yeah.
Um, the Well, our pancakes would be drop scones. That's what the right name on them would be, but they were classed as pancakes here, you know.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
whenever they made pancakes, well, Pancake Tuesday, there was always pancakes for Pancake Tuesday. That's the day before Ash Wednesday, for Lent.
Yeah.
It was to use up all the flour and eggs, because you were supposed to be fasting then, you see.
Yeah.
And so you had pancakes then that day, and everyone loved having the pancakes. So with us, we would have put a wee bit of butter on top and then sprinkled a bit of sugar on them, and that's the way we ate them. Like some
Hmm.
people would have lemon juice on them and sugar. Some people would put jam on them. Some people put golden syrup on them.
Hmm.
You know. So, but pancakes were a great food too, as well,
Yeah.
for something that felt like a treat. It wasn't really, it was just like a scone, you know. It was just because you were putting a you topping on top, you
Yeah.
know.
Is in a different form. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's right. And you'd be waiting on them coming off the pan, and nothing smelt as good as pan of pancakes on the range, and you were just waiting. As soon as they would lift one off, somebody would be away with it,
Yeah,
and not roasting hot.
I love that.
Yeah,
This next little bit on this slide, I actually have a number of different dishes that come up listed. If you go and do any, like you look at an Irish cookbook, you
yeah,
do research with Irish foods, and I thought it'd be interesting to just hear Marie's take on what it is. So again, I saw this all over the place, but I still could not tell you what exactly this is, besides like a little potato scone kind of a thing.
yeah. Are you talking about what's in the dish? No.
No, the
Oh,
potato,
the potato fudge.
yeah,
The potato fudge would be potato cakes.
yeah,
That's what it is. So that would be just mashed potato, leftover mashed potato, flour, uh, and a bit of salt. And I think that's it that went into it. And you just put it all together and floured your table then and rolled it out like a bit of pastry
mm,
into a circle, and then cut it into squares or triangles. And you would fry them on the pan then or the griddle,
yeah,
and have them for your evening tea then with a fried egg or something like that, or a boiled egg or
yeah.
a bit of bacon if you're lucky, you
It's been
know?
interesting talking to Marie about these things because these these aren't really like she's like my granny didn't like measure things. There
No.
weren't written down recipes. It's all just like how you put in enough flour until it
Hmm.
was the right
She,
texture.
Granny used to have a wee enamel mug,
Mm.
and it was always kept in the baking bowl, and it was a big steel tin baking bowl, and it was that width, like it was big, and so that's how she made her scones. And in later days, you see, she couldn't make them, so she would call me in, and she would tell me put on 2 mugs of flour and put on uh, put on some baking soda. So the baking soda went on by putting it in your hand. You took a pinch, put it in your hand. You know how there'd be lumps in it. You
Yeah.
had to go like this to crush it all out, and then throw it into the flour like this, and a pinch of salt, and put on your um, if you were lucky and had raisins, you would put some raisins into the scone, and then the buttermilk, and you would take it up to a kind of doughy consistency. And
Mm.
then what you did was you lifted one side and threw a bit of flour into the bowl and pushed it down and turned the bowl, lifted it up again and put more flour in under it. So there was flour all the way around it, and it was still in the bowl as the way you'd mixed it. And you lifted the bowl and you give it a swirl like this here, and it rounded the scone for you. And you threw a bit of flour on top and put it on the the tray that you were going to put it in the oven with. So it was rounded and all for you with the scone, and you would cut across in the middle,
Mm.
right through the middle of the cake, down about say a couple of centimeters down, and the old people said that was to let the fairies out.
Oh,
So that was always done with scone, and you put it in the oven then. So it would have been in the oven, depending on the heat of the oven, it could have been half an hour to maybe 45 minutes would be in the oven. So you took it out and you would lift it up and you would tap the bottom. And if the bottom sounded both, that it sounded um like that there was no, I don't know how to explain that. Boast. That's the way we were told. Boast. So you tapped it and it sounded like there was nothing in there.
yeah,
That sort of way.
like
It
hollow.
was ready. And
Yeah.
if you thought that the sound wasn't right, you maybe would turn it upside down and put it on for another wee while to be cooked.
Hmm.
And so then they took it out, and the crust would have been very hard in it then whenever you took it out of the oven. So what you did was you wrapped it in a clean tea towel, and put it sitting up on his edge up against a wall or something, uh, away from the wall, but kind of leaning against it. And that would let the steam all out into the cloth, which would soften the crust.
Hmm.
And then, your scone was nice and soft and fresh whenever you went to eat it,
Yeah.
you
See,
know.
we're learning all the secrets from Marie's granny here because
Mm,
that's not all written in any cookbook. You can find
no.
what to put in the bowl and how long to bake it for, supposedly, but all those little details there, I've never read that in any
Yeah.
cookbook or website.
Sometime that I'm making a scone myself, I'll do a video and show you how I would mold it round and put it onto the dish and all.
That'd be fun. We could put that on
Yeah,
our
I'll
YouTube
do that
channel too.
sometime. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so this next one, oh, let me click over here. You've already mentioned it a lot. Like boiled eggs were a major staple. What are some,
Yeah.
besides eating the
Eggs
boiled
up
egg?
anyway.
Yeah,
Anyway, you see, most people kept chickens. Chickens
mm,
were easy enough to keep because they got all the scraps as well, as well as their um their chicken, oh, what do you call it? The meal that you set uh that you serve them.
yeah. To give them
Uh
their scratch, but like they
could
eat
be a bit of
bugs. They
corn
eat
or wheat
bugs
or
too. They keep bugs
yeah.
down in the garden. Yeah,
They were all free range. Like they just walked around, in the garden or whatever. So they ate everything, and they would have got corn or wheat or something thrown to them too as well. But they needed to be looked after because they were one of their main sources of protein. So they would had eggs boiled, fried, scrambled, poached, you name it. They had eggs for it. They made egg custard, on special occasions. Um, Trying to think. And then the eggs went into the baking too, as well. As I said, we did queen cakes at the weekends and stuff like that. So there would have been eggs used for that too, you see.
yeah.
Nothing was measured either whenever you were making your queen cakes. It's all a guessing game. And some weeks they turned out perfect and some weeks they didn't.
Just keep practicing, right?
Yeah, and it depended too on the heat of the fire because you've got to remember it wasn't a turn on fire that you had. It was a fire that you put on turf and you had to open the damper to heating it more and close the damper because it's getting too hot and keep an eye on it because it might get too cold again and maybe the turf is burnt out and then you have
Mm,
to redden it up again. So it was hard work, keeping all that going. And
yeah,
maybe her cooking a dinner for 5 or 6 men coming in from the hill or whatever, and having scones in the oven cooking, and she had to watch all that. Like that was a big juggling match trying to get all that done.
yeah. It is. I was sharing with Marie one of the times that I took my family, Art and Eva were going over to Ireland as well, and took my family over there. And I was pregnant with our fourth child and had three little ones that were 6 and under. And my husband was able to come, but only for about 2 weeks of the trip. And I was there for closer to 3.5 or 4. And we rented a little cottage that was up near one of my cousin's places there in Carndona. And that cottage itself still had the cooker in it that you put the peat in the cooker, or you had to have peat going in the fireplace, or there
Yeah,
was no hot water and no heat in the house. And so I tried my hand. I mean, I still needed to feed my children. We did a lot with Art and Eva's family, but there were different times when I tried my hand at cooking up there. And that cooking on that cooktop and trying to bathe my children, like many times I truly was just like boiling a pot of water and then sponge bathing them. Forget about trying to have a bathtub full of water or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because all the water was carried in too as well from
Yeah. The
a
water was a
spout,
little
a
well
brook,
across the
or
road. Yeah.
yeah, there mightn't even have been a well. It might have been just a wee stream or a brook,
Yeah.
down at the bottom of the lane or whatever, and you go down with the buckets and carry it up.
Yeah. This
Um,
is like a hole. So, I mean, it's not a well like what we think of over
yeah,
here in
yeah,
the US. There's just
yeah,
a hole in the
yeah. I know
ground
what
that
you're
has
talking
water
about.
in
Yeah,
it. You just lift the
yeah,
lid off, and put the lid back down.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
yeah. And nothing tastes as nice as that water coming from the brook.
It's true.
It was lovely.
Yeah, it's true.
But now
Um,
you couldn't drink it now because there's too much sheep dip and everything up in the hills, with people, well, dipping their sheep and all. So that's kind of spread all over the hill and then it runs down and into the water.
yeah,
It's totally different now. You couldn't do it, like too many pesticides and everything else.
yeah, yeah. Before the potato came to Ireland, which was, I should have written it down, early 1800s, if I remember right,
Mm,
maybe the later half of the 1700s. Oat was a big staple in Ireland.
yeah.
And so although I saw oat cakes all over the place, I do think that when the potato came into play and people had more access to flour at different times than before, I think that the oats went out, except possibly for the porridge. Like it was still used a lot for
Yeah.
porridge.
Yeah, well, there still would have been oat cakes, too, as well. Not very common here, but I'd say probably in other parts of Ireland there might have been, they might have been more common. But I remember making them at Granny's, like I remember making oat cakes. Don't ask me what went into them now, but
Well,
it's too long ago. Like I'm going
well,
back 50 years. Like,
these recipes are genuinely all over the internet. People don't even have to have an Irish cookbook in order to find a good version. You can look at the reviews and you can see what people have said, and you can find one that looks easy enough for you to
yeah.
try it out.
But the oat cakes that were here weren't sweet. There was no sugar or anything in them.
Yeah, it's more like a bread, right?
What are you saying, Una? What do we say? There was always a couple of big pans in the cooker for hot water. Yeah, that's right. So there was. Um, they always had to be ready for the next big event, like that was happening about the house. Like,
Mm.
you know, they would finish one meal and then they would be more or less starting to get ready for the next one,
You
just to
mean
make
they weren't
sure
they
that
weren't sitting around watching the football game?
no, there was no TVs.
I
There was
know, I know.
nothing.
There wasn't even
Um,
the electrics, right?
yeah, and even maybe a neighbor come into the house while they were doing something, and you could see them on edge, waiting, waiting on them to go because they had to do something for the tea maybe that evening or the dinner, and it was bad manners to get up and do something while somebody was in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was classed as bad manners. So you could see them kind of, getting very uneasy in the seats. And these ones would be sitting on, and they'd be thinking, there'll be no tea tonight, there'll be no tea tonight. And,
Oh goodness. We've
but
already talked. We've
Killian was a big thing,
Yeah,
you know.
we've already talked about the porridge a little bit.
Yes,
I don't know that we need to go over that anymore.
no.
I
There
can
would have been
imagine.
enough porridge made at night. Sometimes it would be carried over for the next morning, and then whenever the fire went on, it would be heated up, maybe a wee bit of milk or a wee bit of extra water went
Hmm.
into it. Then they wouldn't take as long to make for the morning, or it could have been steeped overnight. A lot of times they steeped oats overnight that they'd be easier cooked the next day.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of recipes that mention cabbage, kale, some of the different vegetables that are easier to grow in the colder climate of Ireland.
Yeah.
What do you remember about things being done with like cabbage and kale?
Right. Well, cabbage would have been mostly served with bacon. So if they had a piece of boiling bacon, they would have boiled the bacon. And then when the bacon was nearly cooked, I still do it here, they would put the cabbage or kale into the water beside the piece of ham or bacon or whatever they were boiling,
Hmm.
and the cabbage would cook in there. But they used to overcook everything. The cabbage could have been in for 2 hours in this pot boiling away with the ham. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they take it out then and serve it with potatoes, then a bit of butter and the ham or bacon. Or sometimes if they didn't have boiling bacon, what they did was they would fry a bit of bacon and boil the cabbage while the bacon was cooking and take the cabbage off and then drain the cabbage and fry it in the lard that would have come out of the bacon, the juices and oils and all. So it left the same taste of the cabbage. Nothing is nice. And maybe a wee bit of an onion fried on with it too as well.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that was served then with potatoes or mashed potatoes and a bit of butter.
Yeah.
So that really everything was really tasty. They had to think about everything to make a taste of it,
Yeah.
out of very simple ingredients,
Yeah.
you
I
know.
remember when my cousin Drew and his wife Veronica came over to Carnation and moved in where Arden and Eva still live, and we were in that area. We were right there as well, and she would do up, and she's from the Sligo area, and she would do up parsnips, just simple parsnips. I'd never had such glorious parsnips in my whole life. Like those, just parsnips, carrots, like they're just root vegetables, but
Yeah,
they were so good. They were just so delicious.
yeah. Probably a
So,
bit of butter in them and a bit of salt and pepper.
yep, yep,
And that'll be it. Like there wouldn't have been
that was
anything
it.
else. There was no mention really of herbs and spices. The only time that I would have seen Granny using sage would have been at Christmas time. She would have made sage and onion stuffing for the turkey. But
Mm,
sometimes the if they'd no bread, they would make a potato based stuffing,
yeah,
for the turkey. No, I never liked the potato one. But I liked the bread one, but I never liked the potato one.
yeah,
But there's a lot of families still make the potato one. Don't make the bread stuffing. But that really, I wouldn't have seen much herbs going into anything. There was no garlic or it was just onions and carrots and parsnips, turnips. Um, in the summer they would had lettuce and scallions, and they would have bought a tomato if they had the money,
mhm,
and a bit of cheese or something. That would have been their evening tea, or a bit of ham and hard boiled eggs. And so the salad kind of would have been served in the evening more so than for dinner. It wouldn't have been served for dinner. Dinner was always potatoes. But the evening then would have been the salad done with hard boiled egg and onion, a bit of lettuce from the garden,
mm,
you know. And it was lovely. It was so nice.
yeah,
Um, then at supper time, you might have got a biscuit with a cup of tea, and that was your supper,
yeah.
you know.
I think we've already talked about the boiled potatoes and buttermilk. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting, like there were a few different recipes for champ and then for colcannon. And what it appeared to me is that one would be like the potatoes with just some of the scallions or spring onions, and then the colcannon would be like there might be some bacon in it, maybe some kale as well, like more was mixed in.
Yeah.
But are these more like area specific, Marie, or
Yeah,
what
well,
would you say?
Kilcannon wouldn't have been a thing for here, like not that I know of, you know, but not in my family anyway. That I'd be talking about both my grandparents. I never seen Kilcannon being made. But definitely the champ would have been a big thing.
Mm,
You know, nothing is nice.
yeah,
And
Patricia said my understanding is champ is from Northern Ireland.
yeah, well, we would have had champ too here. Um, it was lovely, but Kilcannon now would not have been a thing here.
Mm.
Um, but potatoes would have been the main staple,
Well, there it
you
is.
know.
Potatoes, potatoes, and more potatoes, right?
Yeah, it was the main staple, like, and they would have tried to they even made wee potato cakes, from it, and I'm trying to think of other things. Fried potatoes would have been a big thing. Just slice the boiled, the potatoes that was left over from the dinner, slice it down and then fry them in the evening.
Hmm.
Milk and steeped onions with potatoes. That's right, Una.
Yeah.
That would have been another. Yeah, yeah. What you did with the milk was you put it on the pan and you sliced up an onion and threw the milk and let it sit and heating. So the onion was kind of cooking in the milk, and then you put that on your potatoes. I can't remember, would that have went into the hole too in the middle of the mound, or would it went through the potatoes? I can't remember. And then we dulse and seaweed's the next one.
Hmm.
So dulse, I mentioned it before about roasting it on the top of the range. And see, once you start dulse, I bought a packet of dulse last week to have it here to show you what it was like. And I had it sitting on my table, and I came in the other day and I said, "Where did the dulse go?" My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter, had it at. She loves dulse, you know. So the old tastes are still going on if the children get the chance to taste them. Not every family would buy this kind of stuff, for the young ones to taste the old menus. Like uh, my daughter has a friend that comes here for the dinner because her mommy only would cook, you know, kind of processed foods and stuff like that. But she'll
Hmm.
say to me, "What's for the dinner today, Marie?" you know, and she'll decide then whether she's staying or not.
That's fun. We
Yeah,
also already talked about this one too. We integrated that in on one of the other slides, but that's a recipe if you go hunting for Irish recipes, it'll come up quite often and it looks like a fancy dessert. So
yeah, it
I thought
is.
that was interesting when Marie was sharing that, well, really it was
Yeah,
originally made to strengthen people who
yeah.
weren't
I
doing
think
well.
we're going to have a taster of that at our exhibition uh during the Doherty
The gathering.
thing
Yeah.
gathering in August. So I think Kathleen Comiskey's making wee samples of the Carrigan moss, and hopefully we'll have a bit of dulse there too as well that people can taste it and just give a wee taster of what it's like. Maybe a
Hmm.
wee bit of scone bread and stuff
Well,
like
Mary,
that.
she
So,
can't eat it.
huh?
Don't have the dulce in your house then if we're going to have it for the
I know
gathering.
I'll have to hide
So
it, Eva.
Yeah, bring it over to Eva's house.
Yeah. Do
no,
you
I
like
like
dulce,
it too.
Eva?
I
I
know
like it too. No.
that'll be good fun. Uh, we wanted to include this. It actually could be an entire class all on its own. Maybe we'll put it on the list of things as different reasons
Yeah,
why people left Ireland, what the potato blight was like and what it was about, and different contributing factors to why so many
yeah.
basically just survived, left
They,
Ireland.
they really had nothing. There
Yeah.
was nothing here. They were really, really poor. It was hard to survive. Um, just as I said earlier, one neighbor would pull the other neighbor out and help that way. But there was people had nothing. Like they just more or less were kind of relying on the kindness of someone else who would have had something. But
Hmm.
not only that, the shops here would have worked kind of like a wee book that they would go and get their groceries and it'd be marked in the book because they knew that the husbands maybe were away or they were waiting on a payment. So they would do a wee, like a tally thing, for them that uh, they could get a few groceries through that. And then whenever the husband would come back from Scotland or wherever he was, the bill would be paid then, with his
Yeah.
earnings. Uh, and it wasn't a matter of wanting to, it was they had to go away. They had no choice. And while they're away, then the woman, no matter whether she was 8 months pregnant or not, she had to carry on doing the farm work because
Yeah.
the farm sustained them. So it had to be done, you know. And like then as the children got older, then they were given jobs of carrying the water and different things, maybe cutting some of the crops or whatever out in the fields and stacking them up, or milking the cows, taking the cows in from the grazing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Everybody had to do their share. There was none of this. No, I'm not doing it. What would happen today? If they didn't do it, there would be nothing to eat. They
Yeah.
had to.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and like even in a family, you could have parents that had 10 children, and then as they grew through this period of time, 8 of the 10 would leave the country to go
That's
to
right.
another continent, and the others were left behind to try and keep.
And they would go away, but what would happen is most families, they would send home money then to help keep whoever was left on the farm,
Mhm.
because that's why most of them went away, was to earn money to send back,
Yeah.
that everyone could survive. They had no other choice. It was really, really bad here. People just don't understand how bad it was,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And like you hear about the poor Irish, but it really was true. They were poor.
Yeah. And again, there's many contributing factors to that, and I really do think it could be a whole other class. One of the things that Maria and I talked about, making sure we pointed out though, is so many Americans in particular, maybe Canadians too, will be like, oh yeah, for St. Patrick's Day, we're gonna have a good Irish meal. We're gonna have corned beef and cabbage. And yet
Mm.
in reality, corned beef is not an Irish food at all.
No,
The immigrants,
wouldn't, never ever had. I've
yeah,
never had corned beef in my life.
yeah. So the immigrants, when they came over to America, if they would have been looking to try and have an Irish bacon, that would have been anything like that would have been out of their price range. That wouldn't have been something they could get. But the Jewish communities around, they did have corned beef.
Mm.
That's a way that they would preserve meat. And so that was something that then they turned to having.
The
If
Irish adopted them.
they adopted it as they were coming over to here. So there were many, many recipes that changed. Like I grew up in the back of my little girl mind thinking that potato salad was Irish. Well, no, it wasn't. It was just something I always had with all of my Irish cousins down in Oregon when we'd go down for rodeo and go and see all of them and hang out
Yeah.
and be out there with all of them. It's not.
Well, I remember Granny making it with a bit of salad cream,
Mm,
and spring onions. So I suppose there was maybe, if they had the stuff in to make it,
yeah.
you might have had a bit.
Hmm. So it's just fascinating how it can change. Um, and then each family can have their own heritage and their own traditions. And
Mm.
many of the people that catch this recording or even that are on today, you might have those same kinds of things where you grew up feeling like, oh, this was Irish food. But in reality, it was an
Yeah,
adaptation, right? Of
yeah, that's
something
right.
that was there before. Yeah.
Hmm.
So there are a few different recipes I did put in here, but again, they're just from different websites. And I did find I compared several and I'm like, they're all kind of pretty much the same. So I feel confident that you could take a picture. This, of course, will be on YouTube. You could come back to it later on. You could capture it from there. Um, but I feel confident that you'd be able to find examples of these out in
Yeah,
different places. On this thread, you can see the cross that Marie was talking about. I love that, Marie, is to let the fairies out. I mean,
yeah,
I score my bread now, and every time now I'm going to think, oh, I'm letting the fairies out,
yeah, that's right.
because those
And
they can be those
that
fairies can be
recipe,
they can be tricky, right? The fairies can
yeah,
be tricky. Yeah.
that recipe is very close to what we would have used for the scones.
This is why you're glad you have an Irish woman on this too, because this is just the one that the American found. Well, I'm technically an Irish citizen, but still, I'm an American. So,
Yeah,
yeah. What would have been
yeah.
different?
No, I think that's mostly
Same.
what it would be mostly the same.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we would have made then if they had treacle in the house, we would have had treacle scones. That would be molasses in America.
Mhm.
And then sometimes people put raisins into them. Sometimes there might have been a bit of ginger powder put on to make a kind of ginger scone. And all the treacle scones used to be lovely. How they made the treacle scone was um, they would have had this recipe here. So when when they would put in the dry ingredients into the bowl, and they would take a small saucepan and put the treacle and a bit of the buttermilk into the bowl, and maybe a wee bit of butter, and melt melted on the fire, like say the molasses would be all mixed through the milk. And then they would add the rest of the milk into it to cool it down. And they would put a well in the middle of the flour and pour the milk and treacle into it and just mix it and then cook it. And just the way I told you to swirl it in the bowl and put it on the baking tray and cut your cross in the middle and into the oven for the same amount of time. Made lovely bread, lovely scone, and it
Sounds
was a wee
delicious.
bit sweet, so it was nice. That with a big lump of country butter was lovely.
Always the butter.
Yeah. Oh, I needed the butter, like.
And then Maria already talked about this is one of those ones where I think it has evolved over the years. Like what we look at as being an Irish stew now, she said would have had mince more like. Um,
Yeah, I never had a Irish stew with lamb in it, and it was whenever I was older that I realized that wasn't the real Irish stew because it's more down, well, maybe in Northern Ireland, but definitely around Dublin and all would have had lamb in their stew. But up here, I suppose they couldn't afford lamb all the time, and it would have been a bit of mince would have been used for the Irish stew. And there would have been a lot more potatoes in it than that there
right.
pot shows.
That's mostly meat. I'm like,
No, uh, it was a ratio of where the meat is, the potatoes would have been, and where the potatoes are, that's where the meat was,
yes,
because they hadn't a lot. So the meat was rolled into wee balls and fried off, maybe coated in a wee bit of flour before it was fried. And once that was brown, then they added the carrots and if they turnip or parsnips, added that on and onions. I forgot about the onions. Onions was used for nearly everything. So then, whenever that was fried off, then they added potatoes and either water or stock, depended
hmm.
what they had.
Well, and even
And
as I put this one in, I'm like, they wouldn't have had olive oil, and
no,
they may or may not have had garlic, and then a
no,
carrot's
there would have
a
been no
carrot.
garlic.
So, like, what's this one carrot
Yeah,
in the Dutch carrots? Like a carrot's a
yeah.
carrot, you know? So,
And there would have been no bay leaves and no thyme and no
yeah,
parsley
Worcestershire
and
sauce.
no Worcestershire sauce, you know. So it was just potatoes. It was potatoes, carrots, turnip, onions, wee bit of parsnip if they had it. Uh, that would have been it. And then the either a bit of stock if they had it in the house, or just water onto it, and they would boil it up, and then they would uh, whenever it was boiled, if it was a bit watery, then they would put a bit of pesto powder onto it, which would be a kind of mix of corn flour and I suppose gravy brownie.
Yeah.
It's a kind of easy form of that, just to thicken it a bit.
One
But
of the recipes
you
also
wouldn't have
talked
needed
about,
much.
yeah,
Sorry.
one of the recipes also talked about that they might take a potato or take some leftover mashed potato and smash that up and mix it in so that it would thicken the broth up
Well,
a little bit.
that might have been if they were using potatoes that weren't very floury. Around here, our potatoes would be very floury.
Mm,
So whenever they were boiled up, they would break away, which would make the gravy kind of thicker.
Got it.
And it only, sometimes they wouldn't even put anything through if it wasn't too watery, like they wouldn't put anything through it to thicken it. It's just if it was too watery, then they would add pesto or corn flour or whatever and to thicken it a bit,
Yeah.
But there definitely wouldn't have been any of them herbs or spices around here, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Oh, that's just more details about
Yeah.
the modernized Irish stew. This
Yeah.
is this is a recipe for the champ, and it's basically just the potatoes, milk, and onion.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good enough recipe there for that. Yeah.
Yeah. I did notice that a lot of them talked about pushing it through the sieve.
No, I just mashed them.
But this one says with a potato masher.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way we would have done it. Yeah.
I did find this book for free if you've got Amazon Kindle Unlimited, and you can like check them in and out. And the thing that I liked about this one is their recipes like this. They're more like
Mm.
there's not a how
Yeah.
many potatoes or how much flour or how much butter. It's more like the way that Marie's been talking, right?
Yeah.
So if that's of interest to you, you guys
That's
could,
a lovely book, isn't it?
yeah,
In fact, the scone looks very like Granny's scone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty decent one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is just kind of wrapping up our whole communication and hopes that this little journey we've had today talking about Irish food has helped you to feel more connected to your own Irish heritage, whether you're in Ireland or you're somewhere else.
Yeah.
Some of these things, like I cannot stand to put a bowl in the sink unless I have scraped every single last bit out of that bowl. And I think that's probably in my DNA. I think
Yeah.
that's come down through the generations. Um,
Let's not to waste anything. You see, everything was precious to them.
yeah, not to waste anything at all.
Mm.
And I love this little saying at the bottom, in the shelter of each other, people survive. And that is part
Mhm.
of our heritage. There's always room
Yeah,
for one more. There's always
definitely.
a place at the table.
Yeah. And no matter in the winter time, like if you call an Irish household, most places would have a pot of stew on or a pot of soup, that you could sit and have a warm meal before you would head on your way again.
Mm,
And the soup would have been boiled for hours too, as well, of course. I don't know what the reason was why they boiled. Well, I suppose they had barley and oats and all in the soup.
right.
So they would have had to boil it for a good while to get that tea kind of thicken the soup, you know.
Well, and if you're juggling a whole household, the whole ranch farm, all the animals, your husband's off working out of the country, you don't have
Mm,
time to be putting things in at different times. You put
no.
it all in the pot and
Mm.
you're done
And the
with it.
soup, the soup would have done the next day too, as well. Like, it was a big, big pot. And the soup was served with potatoes too. You put potatoes in the middle of the bowl and then poured the soup over it like gravy. And that was your meal for that day and the next, you know.
Yeah,
So they tried to make things, as I was saying earlier, they tried to make things for a couple of days, that they wouldn't be standing cooking all the time, and all they'd have to do is heating it the next day. And then that time the next day would be gone on to something else. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I do.
Uh, that they would have things done in the house. And you've got to remember it was a time that there was no toilets, there was no running water, there was no nothing. So their time was precious. They had to work around and work around everything and try to manage their time as best they could.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all your stories, Marie. I hope you guys have
Oh, I
enjoyed
hope
our
so too.
presentation. And this is where basically, if anybody had any questions, I mean, with the class presentation time, it's kind of up, but we always like to just leave the time open as well. If you have any questions, or if you have any of your own stories to share, like we
Yeah,
love to have that time together to connect too.
I'd love to hear some stories if you've different stories to mine. Una,
Well,
I'd say you have a couple anyway.
no, well, I was adding them in there to you for you to put on.
Yeah, well, you were on about the cockle stew, was it? And what
Yeah,
else was it?
it was
That would be
the
cockles would be
Winkles
picked
stew.
from the rocks,
Yeah, that was the Winkles.
winkles.
Yeah, and you just they boiled them in butter or cooked them in butter, and then that butter helps thicken up as well. And then there was milk and onions. Again, milk and onions. They were thrown into that and were left in the thing that's thickened up. And that was
Hmm.
their Winkle stew or Winkle broth.
Yeah, I never had anything like that, but because we didn't
Well,
live
see,
at the coast.
Alan's uncle, my husband's family were living on the water, beside the water, and
Yeah,
then they had the white fish and the fish and the mackerel and just the white fish. They just had that probably
yeah.
most days.
They were lucky, really. They lived like
Oh,
kings to
yeah,
have
yeah.
all that. Like,
You couldn't have it now though. Can't go fish
no,
there.
you're not allowed to. No,
Right today.
it's a
No,
pity, isn't it, that people just can't fish off their own waters and.
I know that's
Mm,
terrible.
I
Really
know.
bad.
Oh,
Rosie, you had mentioned that you grew up thinking that Irish or potato salad was an Irish dish. Well, my mom, her she grew up next to her Irish grandmother, and when every so often when I was a kid, my sisters and I were kids, she would make corned beef hash, and I grew up thinking that was an Irish,
Mm,
Yeah.
but and I've had this thought every once in a while after hearing that this was food was going to be the subject of this seminar, is like my grandma, my mom grew up next door to her Irish grandmother, and I was wondering, did did great grandma ever make champ for her
mm,
grandkids?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. She
she
probably
might have.
did. She would have had all. She would have had all them old recipes. Like so, it was all. It was all simple cooking, and it was just. They just had to make things stretch to make ends meet, and they had to use what they had just, and it was all very simple stuff. Just, and it was tasty too at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that philosophy, whatever you want to call it, of life, stood my great grandparents well when the Depression hit.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so too. They're already used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were able to make ends meet. That's even times here that money be tight. I can still keep the house. I can still keep everyone fed because I've learned how to do it all. I've learned how to make things stretch and how to maybe make things and put them in the freezer to take out another time. And there's a lot of people who haven't even been taught how to cook, which is bad now. You know, and they're eating all processed foods, and they should have been taught how to cook growing up
Yeah,
for
that's
their
true.
for their families coming in.
Yeah.
I think David wanted to say something, did he? David, did you want to say something? You're on mute, David.
Let me see if I can
There
ask.
we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question I had, Rose, you had mentioned earlier on that potatoes came to Ireland in the late 1800s. It was
Mm.
not a native plant in Ireland.
Mm-mm.
oh,
Mm.
Wow, that was surprising. I didn't realize that.
Mm.
If I remember right, they came from South America.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
So that
thought
Christopher
it was
Columbus, wasn't it?
I thought it was
Yeah,
Sir Walter Raleigh.
Walter
Oh,
Raleigh, yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
was it too? And I thought it was Christopher Columbus.
Oh, they came from America.
Yeah,
Uh,
but then it quickly became the staple, it sounds like.
yeah.
yeah.
Slowly.
Up to the drought, then um the famine, like
The blight, yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
blights killed
But
them
with
all, and
the penal laws, the people had to, the plants that they were growing that they could actually pay their land leases with, it wasn't the potatoes. So they
Hmm.
grew crops to pay the land lease. They went to the landlord and went over to England or wherever they went for the payments, and they ate the potatoes.
hmm.
Well,
Oh, okay. Here it is. Sorry, I was remembering my dates wrong. They credit the English explorer Sir Walter Raleigh with planting the first tubers in 1589 at his estate in County Cork, originally
Hmm.
brought from South America by Spanish ships.
huh.
The
Yeah.
crop thrived in Ireland's cool, damp climate.
I thought it was Christopher Columbus took them back, but maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Mr. Walter Raleigh
Hey?
took him to England.
Okay.
Mr. Walter Raleigh, I thought, took him
Was
to
it,
England.
it was
Maybe.
100 years later
Was it?
was was Sir Walter Raleigh, yeah, from Christopher Columbus. So
Okay.
we're all getting a history lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they do talk about how that potato is related to a Spanish one. So the point of origin would have been Spain itself.
Oh, there
So
you go.
But
perhaps Spain was getting that, Spain got them to other places and then they came back to Ireland.
Yeah.
There's a few different things that seem to think that is the way that happened.
I think they tried to eat them raw whenever they came over to England, didn't they? They tasted them thinking they could eat them raw.
Hmm.
They didn't know they had to cook them.
One of the things we like here is when we have mashed potatoes, is the next day make potato pancakes out of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love
Lovely.
potato pancakes with butter on top of it.
Yeah. Oh,
Delicious.
lovely. So
Yeah.
nice.
I still like Irish potatoes with a bit of Irish butter and salt.
Well,
Mm.
that's all you need, Eva.
Yeah.
And a scallion.
And a scallion, yeah. And then a
And,
boiled egg.
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds
maybe not the boiled egg.
No, I could do a fried egg with it.
That
Poached
sounds
egg and
good.
Yeah. Fried egg's lovely with it.
Yeah.
So we're all hungry now, are we?
Yes,
Yeah.
we
I
are.
had me dinner a wee while ago, probably looking for more now.
Well, I'm so glad those of you that could join us live. That was fun. I mean, we did have a smaller crowd today, but it's interesting because we do find that our YouTube views are going up and up and up. I
Yeah.
think that perhaps people are like, oh, it's fun to join live and be able to
Really
chat
is.
with everyone. And also, if they have something else, they know they can catch it on YouTube. So,
Yeah.
It'd be so helpful if you that have joined would maybe get someone to join with you the next time, or
Yeah.
to big up the numbers for the
Yeah.
bring a,
next day.
bring a friend. Yeah.
Just bring a friend. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
So I have a new saying I introduced to the board earlier today in our meeting that now we've had a moment and let's turn this into momentum.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Oh,
Yes.
isn't that good?
Yeah.
I'm at a conference right now, and that's what one lady
Mm.
said. And I said, I'm stealing that from you. And she said, that's all right, because I stole it from someone else.
Yeah. Is anyone here coming to the gathering in August?
I am.
Yeah, me too.
I'll drag Una along.
I got my calendar marked for next year. I just need a date.
But we're
Oh,
talking
probably,
we're talking July. We don't have the specific dates. I have to talk to a
Okay.
couple of the hotels, but
Okay.
definitely after the 4th of July, probably sometime within the last 2 weeks of July.
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
That
Looking
sound
forward
good,
to that.
David.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, good. Good, good.
All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, unless someone has another story to share or something.
Una, have you any more to share?
Una, have you got any family recipes to surprise us with?
No, I don't think so.
Una was brought up in Northern Ireland, so her recipes might be slightly different to mine, but more or less the same, aren't they, Una?
That's the same, yeah, more or less the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's my adopted sister.
I love it.
I'm a doctor too.
We've all adopted her.
Yes.
I must be the only non-Doherty here.
Yeah.
But you're related to my husband, who's a Doherty. So there you go. You must have Doherty somewhere.
We keep
Uh,
bringing her along, bringing her
Yeah,
along.
because his family's Doherty on both sides, so you have to have
Yeah.
Doherty in you. Yeah.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing you all the next time. Sorry about the
Chrissy,
weirdness with
what
the
date are
internet.
you coming?
Sorry?
Okay.
What date are you coming?
The 1st.
1st of August.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Great. And Rosie, you coming the same time?
Yes. I'm
Great.
coming along in her suitcase, kind of.
Ah, lovely. Why not?
In the seat next to me on the plane.
Right.
Is your son coming this time?
No,
No.
he's not. He's working. He's working this summer.
Oh, very good.
Got to save up money for whatever he's going to do next.
Yeah, well, that has to be done too.
Yep.
Now that he's a grown man.
Yeah.
Grown
Rosie,
men.
I might use this presentation of yours and put it on one of our boards
Sure.
for the next exhibition. Is
Great.
that all right?
That'd be great.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, because it's you and me that's on it. So, and I'll put the Doherty Association on it.
Yeah, you can put a big line through that and be like, just kidding, she's an American.
So I'll keep this and put it on a board. I think that'd be nice.
Like, full disclaimer, this was made by an American.
You have your Irish citizenship.
I do.
With a hint of Irish.
I don't feel like it would be real until I actually like put a stake in the ground and own something over there. So
yeah, I saw a house for sale the other day.
is it my house, Marie?
I'm not sure. I should have took a photograph. I'm looking away at houses for her. Get her here.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to head off. You guys are going to close out the meeting, and I have to go to a class. All right. See you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Ta-ta.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to all our stories, and I hope you all enjoyed this.
Very
Okay.
much
I
so.
did.
I think
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.